everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today we have some super interesting topics. Before we jump into that, we wanted to have a little fun and talk about the Super Bowl. Hey, Dee, good morning. Did you have a chance to catch a Super Bowl last week?
Of course I watched the Super Bowl.
Why do I
watched the
even
Super
ask that
Bowl.
question? Dude, you love football.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you don't love football, you tend to watch the Super Bowl, if nothing else, for the advertisements.
Absolutely. So what was your favorite one?
I'll tell you what was my least favorite, and that was the Coinbase advertisement, which was just a bouncing QR code.
You know, it was funny. It actually didn't catch my attention until after about 10 seconds. I was like, oh, there's this thing bouncing on the screen and then something's supposed to come out. I didn't even for some reason, my brain didn't even recognize because I was talking and this stuff that it was a QR code. And
Yeah,
it kept going on and on and on. And eventually I put my camera up to it and I saw that it was Coinbase. And then I
yeah.
actually thought to myself, that might be pretty smart because everyone's going to put their cameras up to it. It's going to register Coinbase and maybe a percentage of them will go to the website. Come to find out, so many people went to Coinbase's website that the website crashed.
I didn't do it because I was just like, all right, never scan a QR code that you don't know where it's taking you or what it is. That's just a huge issue. It felt very like, all right, well, okay, give somebody access to your account or something like that. Like it reminded me of scams and stuff.
Well, you are also much more security conscious than most because you are deep into the tech industry. I mean, I know people who still pick up the phone to those robocalls and then try to stop them from bothering them. And I'm like, hey, it's
Yeah.
not going to stop. The only thing they're doing is getting your attention and know that they can call you back 15 more times. It felt kind of a little bit like the beginning of something new because there was 3 crypto ads.
Yeah, I felt like there were a ton of them. I don't know.
You sound like you're frustrated with the amount of push on crypto.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it multiple times. I feel like they're not there yet. And if you're into crypto, then it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword. Anybody who is advertising on the Super Bowl is not doing it because they believe in a decentralized finance world. They're doing it because they have a centralized platform they can make money off of.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on with that right now, especially with this fight between the VCs and some of the billionaires that are on the side of Web3 is just Web2
Yeah.
repackaged, and it's not really decentralized and that kind of stuff. And matter of fact, that's to be a topic we can do for an entire episode, actually, huh? Because there's just like a lot to talk about whether or not Web3 really is Web3 or is it something else that's being just repackaged.
Well, now you have to differentiate between what is actually Web3 and what is kind of the brand Web3,
Yeah.
because the two have kind of become different things. And let me ask you something, right? For anybody like, a normal user who is going out there, not somebody who's super knowledgeable about tech or about decentralized kind of Web3 platforms, and they go out and they buy, let's say, a couple $100 worth of Bitcoin.
Okay.
What percentage of the experience that they're having would you say is actually decentralized, and what percentage is actually centralized?
That's a really, really good question. So I'm imagining they're going Coinbase, they go buy it, centralized. Then they make the purchase. I don't know how the Bitcoin is actually purchased, right? So we
Yeah.
don't know what's happening on the back end there. Then they own it. They could download it. They can transfer it to their bank. That's all centralized. So in that particular case, not much,
Right. It's
right?
probably what, 85, 90% centralized.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the only thing that is happening that is decentralized at this point in time is the actual transaction on the blockchain that is transferring you Bitcoin.
Correct. Yeah.
Everything else is happening on somebody's server.
Yeah. And I was actually on, I was going to tell you this, and it has nothing to do with the Super Bowl, but I was on Decentraland the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I had signed up for it. I wanted to experience it. I went in. Actually, my computer is quite slow, by the way, I realized. It requires a pretty decent machine in order to process that real time, kind of move around without having any jerkiness.
Yeah, it's a 3D rendered space, and I don't think that your MacBook has a lot of unless you get some of the newer MacBook Pros. Most of them don't have very good graphics cards inside them.
Not for that. It actually states you do not have a separate graphic processing unit.
Yeah.
It may be slow, blah blah. But anyway, so I went into it and stuff, and I was moving around it, and the whole thing is supposed to be decentralized, right?
Hmm.
And maybe it is. I don't know for sure because I don't know how to like prove that. But what I was going to tell you is it was actually quite fun. I actually went to a bar, and then you have to kind of prove that you're over 21 years old by prove in quotes because you just put in your birth date or whatever. But I actually went into this bar,
Why?
and there was like music playing. It was really cool.
Uh,
And then they had video games, like old arcade games, and you can walk up and turn on all the old arcade games, and then walk over to the bar, and they'll serve you a beer and stuff like that. And it was actually really interesting. It was really fun,
mhm.
and it kind of dawned on me in the moment that this experience that people really enjoy with Decentraland, it doesn't necessarily have to be decentralized to be enjoyable. Meaning,
Well,
this is
yeah,
just
because
it's just a fun experience.
I don't think you did anything in that situation that actually involved anything decentralized, right? That's probably all running on servers somewhere.
I would
Unless
imagine.
you actually used a cryptocurrency in order to purchase something, or I imagine that the property is registered as an NFT, but there's no the blockchain doesn't actually get queried unless somebody the property is changing hands.
I looked around on the marketplace and everything, and obviously everything has to be purchased with cryptocurrency. But when you connect with MetaMask, you have the
Hmm.
opportunity for MetaMask to pull from your bank, obviously to
Hmm.
get the crypto to buy it in order to use it and that kind of stuff. So the platform itself obviously doesn't take, as far as I saw, it didn't take US dollars. It was all, either Ethereum or Mana or any of the other coins that they're accepting on the platform. But the experience itself, like, you wouldn't really know the difference. Like, it's not like you're gonna go into Decentraland and be like, oh, I could tell this is decentralized, right? It's just a fun
Yeah.
experience for people to hang out.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you went into this bar, were they charging like mana or anything to play any of the games or to get a drink?
No, they didn't in this particular one, but I did hear that some of
Okay.
them have charges at the bouncer at the front door. If it's a private bar or something like that, they charge a little bit.
Now, would you pay a cover charge, go inside, and pay mana for a digital drink?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. The way it kind of felt to me was like if you go to like Las Vegas or something like that, and you're
Yeah.
like, look, I'm going to spend this money because it's just entertaining.
Hmm.
The drinks were free, obviously, in the bar that I was in, and they had video games, and that was kind of fun and everything. Would I spend? I mean, if they were like, oh, it costs you like 10 cents to get in the quote unquote 10 cents to get in the bar, but maybe I would do microtransactions to have fun experiences like that. Because it was a really interesting kind of land to roam around in and stuff. It was kind of cool.
Hmm.
Um, but I would, in my mind, I'm chalking it up though as kind of like a Vegas experience where you're like, okay, I know I'm going to go
Hmm.
and spend this money, and it's not going to really provide me anything in return other than entertainment in the moment. So the answer is yes, probably if it was like a really small amount. If
Just
it's
to
like a
try it
large
out.
amount, like here's a 10, yeah, just try it out. If it was like, oh, here's a $10 cover charge every time you walk into a bar, I'd be like, why am I
Yeah.
walking into this bar in this metaverse? You know what I mean? And paying $10 to get in. Um, and people and these people that were in there, they were walking around and they would chat and say hi and that kind of stuff. It's just interesting to explore because
Hmm.
I'd gone on it and looked at it, but I hadn't really actually like spent like a significant amount of time trying to go to someone's private bar or someone's
Hmm.
private residence or anything like that to walk around and look. And I can see the appeal for sure.
Sure.
Because it was fun. But I don't know. It's just hard to say how all this stuff will play out. But like when this fight is going, not fight, this conversation's going on about like what is what is metaverse? What how does crypto
Hmm.
play with it and all this kind of stuff? It feels slightly forced in the sense that like the metaverse part was super cool. It was interesting and fun. But then it's like, oh, well, you have to pay with Ether. Okay, well then connect this account so you can take US dollars from your checking account to buy Ether so you can buy this one little thing. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Is there gas fees involved with that also?
mm, well, I don't know. I mean, it was just a flat fee.
Yeah.
So like if you want to buy a pair of shoes or something like that, you have to, use Ether in order to buy the shoes or
Sure.
whatever. Oh, the fees. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you do pay a fee if you're converting your US dollars to Ether, yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're buying something with Ether you currently have, are there gas fees associated with that?
Not that I saw. Not
Okay.
that I saw. So if you already have it, but what felt slightly forced, and maybe it's just my perspective because I've been around for a long time, is that I'm going through multiple stages here. So I'm like, okay, I'm taking my US dollars, I'm paying a fee, converting it to Ether so I can use the Ether to buy a pair of shoes when I could have just used US dollars to buy the shoes and still had the same experience in the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, there's a novelty aspect to it because you're checking things out for the first time. That's kind of the Vegas factor you're
Yeah.
describing. But I mean, we don't go to Vegas every month, right? Or
No.
like sometimes I go a year or two without going to Vegas, and we're just over in California. I
Well,
think one of the things.
I did do a little bit of a deep dive on some one other aspect that you're going to find quite interesting, which is
Mhm.
the cheapest the cheapest land I was able to find was like $15,000 to buy, right? It was
Yeah.
like super expensive. Everything's like really expensive right now. And I was like, oh, it'd be interesting. I looked this up because you know how much I was interested in like billboards for a long time. I was like, oh, billboards are so interesting, like the business model.
Hmm.
Like you put this billboard and then people pay you for 3 months to put their stuff up there or whatever. So I typed in like metaverse billboards and I started going down this rabbit hole.
Hmm.
And a lot of people or companies, or I don't really know what these are because I don't have details on the people behind them, but have purchased these plots of land, like 250 plots of land, and built billboards on them. And then you
Yeah.
pay this company to put your company names on there, and then they'll spew them all across these billboards so that all these people that are going into Decentraland and roaming around are basically seeing your advertisements across all these billboards. That whole
Sure.
business is fully fleshed out already. I mean, one company
Hmm.
said I think at 250 or 270 active billboards, and that you can pick which ones you want it displayed on which aspects of which roads, near which casinos. I mean,
Hmm.
it was all
Yeah, I
done.
mean that's basically just double click, right? That's just online advertising
Yeah.
just inserted into. I mean that is a very clear use case, but you need to get the consumers into the space,
Yes.
which it's not going to. I don't think it's necessarily going to be like kind of what we're discovering through this mental exercise. It's not going to be just a one to one translation of what happens in the real world into this virtual world. There's got to be something extra. So somebody is out there has got to think through kind of what is the use case, what is the experience for somebody who maybe isn't going to spend $15,000 on a piece of land or isn't going to isn't a corporate advertiser or something.
Yeah.
For a normal mainstream user to go in and spend some time in here and actually enjoy themselves and get value out of the experience, so that they can be advertised
Mhm.
to. Like, what is that person's experience? And that's what I'm
Well,
waiting for somebody to figure out.
I'll tell you something that really caught my attention. So when I went into this bar and I started walking around and stuff, they did two things that I thought was fun. They said, "Oh, there's 16 things to interact with in here. You should find them all." And, so it kind of guides you a little bit of like how to have, some interactions that you're maybe not noticing right away or something like that. There was a TV in there, and on the TV, something was playing. Right? It looked to me like a YouTube video or something of something going on. And I thought to
Hmm.
myself, wow, like you could technically like go into this bar in the metaverse, sit down at the bar, properly orient your view, and you can watch the Super Bowl in there. Like they could stream the Super Bowl in there. And I was like,
That's interesting. And
yeah.
I wonder what kind of like licensing rights they had to acquire in order for that to happen.
Oh man, so many things ran through my mind when I was sitting there because I was looking at that screen. I was like, oh, so they're playing the video, and it looked like a cartoon or something. But I was like thinking, okay, this is Super Bowl Sunday. This was in the evening. And I was like, you could totally play the Super Bowl here, and you could tell all your friends, be like, hey, meet me on into Decentraland, meet me at this bar
Hmm.
on this particular road. Let's all watch Super Bowl together. And then you have your chat up, and it's just like 10 or 15 of your friends sitting around the bar, watching the Super Bowl, listening to it, chatting in the metaverse and on that experience. And I thought that might be kind of fun. That might be kind of interesting. And then like my brain went down this rabbit hole of like what you just said. Like, how would they even get the licensing rights to it? Would you even do it or just wait till someone slaps your hand and says you can't do it? How does that all play out? Right. And it made me realize that there's like a bigger opportunity here, but it's
Hmm.
not under control. Like, I don't think that the people who put on the Super Bowl are thinking, like, I hope someone doesn't stream this in the metaverse.
Well, it brings up like what is the experience once the novelty wears off of somebody watching, a movie, a TV show, a sporting event within this metaverse. I assume considering you're using your integrated graphics MacBook. you were not using a VR system.
Hmm.
So how does it compare once the novelty wears off to just being in a Discord or a Slack chat with your buddies and everybody's watching the Super Bowl at the same time at their home on a big screen?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think there's a huge novelty aspect, and the novelty aspect might last for a while. Meaning, it might just be fun to shake things up and be in the metaverse for a while. And there might be times where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to stare at my screen. I want to be able to walk around and kind of interact in my house a little bit more openly.
Yeah,
Um, but there's a lot there, and everything has to be purchased, or everything has to be rented or whatever it is, using different types of tokens.
yeah.
So I don't know. It was interesting to say the least. And the Super Bowl is what kind of caught my attention, was because it could be played in there. But then I also thought to myself, wow, they have like arcade games you could basically
Yeah.
like take old ROMs and put them in there, and people could stand around and play arcade games together.
Well, we're going to see this happen to some extent. We're going to see people developing experiences for these metaverse worlds, and some of them are going to work and some of them aren't. But it would be interesting, like you think about like a co-op gameplay, right? I mean, or an MMO where you have a storyline, you're playing through it, and you're doing it through a shared multiversal universe. It's not that different from like World of Warcraft or EverQuest or something at that point.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But back to the Super Bowl just for a second. What did you think?
Mhm.
I thought that was the best halftime show I ever seen.
I mean, Prince to me still holds the title. I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, I love all these artists. Obviously, grew up with them.
Yeah.
Going to an Eminem, especially if Dr. Dre's with him. Dr. Dre. I don't think performs very much anymore.
Yeah.
Eminem doesn't perform very much anymore. But seeing them in concert is on my bucket list, and I've seen Snoop Dogg a few times, and it always kind of surprised me a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, Snoop Dogg was a musical artist. I think of him as like a TV personality nowadays,
Yep.
but it was a good performance. It was a great show. I think that for the Super Bowl and the technical limitations they have of like setting up the stage quickly and all these other things like hip hop where it's a lot of vocalists and dancing and stuff is especially suited for it. I'm not a fan of the medley thing of like we're gonna play 30 seconds of a song and then move on to a different song.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody there was fantastic. The performance itself with all the choreography and everything was great. Obviously, the music is great. Grew up on it, so I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's way better than a lot of the performances we've seen in the past few years, for sure.
Yeah. And the nostalgia was awesome. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
they hit it right at our age group. You know what I mean? It was like everyone I know was like texting, going, "This is like so amazing. This is so much fun." As a Super Bowl halftime show, but overall, like,
I did have a moment in there where they started playing California Love, and I was like,
yeah,
"Are they gonna bust out the Tupac hologram?"
I know, right? I was like,
Yeah,
what are they gonna do? But I think
yeah,
during the day like that, I think it's really hard to do a hologram during the day, right?
it is. I mean, it was in a dome, so maybe they can control the light, but who knows?
Yeah. No, it was good though. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the topics of the day, and actually, this first one kind of slides in really nicely with us talking about like video cards and all that other stuff. But you brought this to my attention. I had not seen this, and then I saw an article that dropped today regarding it in The Verge. But it's this issue with Newegg and
Yep.
their problems with customer service, and how it kind of escalated into this YouTuber basically having this issue and then posting it on his YouTube channel, which has like 1.5 million followers or something like that or more. Um, and now it's become like a really big issue. And ultimately, this issue, and maybe you can explain it in a little more detail, but ultimately, it revolves around this customer service issue that not a lot of people think about, but is actually still a problem and has been a problem for a very long time.
Yeah. So just to summarize what actually happened, so there was a YouTuber who specializes in just PC parts and technology and building gaming PCs and testing hardware, and this person is known for calling out companies when they do something that's unethical or not quite right. So he bought a motherboard that he thought he needed from Newegg, and then while it was being shipped, they either found a motherboard or fixed a motherboard or something, but they got it done without needing this motherboard. So it came in and he slapped an RMA on it immediately and sent it back out without even opening it. Now Newegg responded and said like, "Oh well, this thing is damaged," and the response from the channel is called Gamers Nexus. He apparently got on the phone with them and everything else and tried to figure out how did this happen. I never even opened it, and they said, it was damaged. Now they didn't process his return, and they also didn't send his port back, which he spent $500 for. So he basically complained on Twitter and created a video for it. And at the time that I saw the video, had over 500,000 views. And as soon as that video went out, there were tons of other stories that started coming out from consumers, and and this channel started to collect them. Now, the follow up was that after the news started hitting, and every other YouTuber and Twitter influencer and everything else started picking up the story and said, "Can you believe this?" And nobody's like, "Of course you can believe this. It's Newegg. They've been a problem for a while now, apparently." Newegg decided, oh, we're going to make this a priority because these are 1.5 million YouTube followers who are now hearing this message. Send him his money back, send him the board back. He got the board. It had an RMA tag on it from the manufacturer, which was Gigabyte. And apparently he called them up and asked for kind of the history on the motherboard, and they said, well, Newegg sent it to us and asked if we could repair it. We said we could repair it for $100. They said, Newegg said no, so we sent it back to Newegg, and they just threw it in a box and sold it. So Newegg sold Gamers Nexus a damaged motherboard that would not function, and then refused the return when they tried to return it. So that's a huge issue. I think it speaks a little bit to a larger issue of not too long ago, a lot of companies, Newegg, I can think of Twitch having issues, YouTube has had issues, have switched more and more to an automated system for managing customer service, chat bots and the voice-enabled systems. And I'm sure that everybody thought to themselves, this is going to help things out a lot as far as getting people their service more and reducing our costs. And if you have a very, very routine issue, it can be taken care of very quickly. Things like, oh, I'm having trouble logging into my accounts. Can reset the password or something like that. For anything that is kind of off the beaten path or non-routine, it just seems like they just completely dropped the ball.
Yeah. This is something though that I feel like keeps reoccurring over and over again. Like I hear issues like this all the time. When I read this, I thought, yeah, like this happens. And from a user experience standpoint, I feel like the old saying of the customer is always right is really the way to go. And I think that to some extent, chatbots are great, right? So there are times when I don't want to dial a phone number and talk to anyone. And I've gone on the chatbot and said, I'd like to return this. How do I go about doing it? And they give me like a code and everything, and I can return something, and it works out really nicely. And then there are times when I go in and it's non-standard, as you mentioned, and I say, hey, this is the issue I'm having. And they're like, oh, you're going to need to talk to customer service. We'll call you. And then they don't call. Then you call them back. And it becomes like this big circle. It's a very expensive thing to handle, which is having lots and lots of humans on phones all day long solving problems. I had friends that worked in tech support and customer service at some big tech companies early on in their careers. And they said these are like really long days. Like you have emotions, people are yelling at you. Some people are nice, some people are not. And it's a pretty complicated business. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're basically in service of your customer, and that customer is always right has to happen. And the reason why it has to happen is because of word of mouth, but more importantly, because of our time we're in right now, social media, YouTubers, things like that, they go out and suddenly they're like, yeah, no thanks. I don't really like this. Here's how I was treated. And 3 or 4 million people see it. Well, you're in trouble, because if those 3 million people tell one person, right now, you're at 3 or 4 to 6 million people, that just saw this thing, and now your brand starts to go downhill. I don't necessarily know what the like perfect formula is to solve this problem as you scale. I think if you have a small business and you have a large
Yeah.
customer service team, I think you can just nail it, right? I think
Well,
as you start to scale and have a huge business, it all starts to fall apart for some reason, and I don't know why.
there are examples. I'm gonna bring this up. There are examples of people who have handled this incredibly well.
Yeah, yeah. Like who's that?
Amazon.
Yep.
Amazon handles this very, very well. You have a problem, that they will take care of it, and it will happen fast. And it's happened for me multiple times where I was like, all right, they ship me the wrong item, or the item is damaged, or have some kind of problem. They will just say, oh, I'm sorry that happened. You go ahead and keep whatever you have, and we'll ship you another one. Or they'll say, just drop it off at this brick and mortar location, usually like a Whole Foods, and we'll send you another one immediately. I mean, they won't even wait to receive it. They'll say, you've got 3 weeks to return it. We're sending you another one.
I love it. Yeah.
Costco, Costco is legendary for their return
Mm-hmm.
policy.
Mm-hmm.
They handle it so well. And there are other examples I'm sure that I'm not thinking of, but the reality is that when you start using automation and you're hoping to replace human workers for it, if you're going to ever get to that point where you're going to be able to replace the human workers, it takes a long time, and it has to be thought out and done carefully. The best use for automation early on is to increase the capacity of the staff that you have, not to reduce the staff right away,
Mm-hmm.
especially for something like this.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon has deep pockets, and
Sure.
they definitely can handle like a lot of loss if they need to. Same thing with Costco, right? And
Hmm.
so I think with small businesses they struggle with this a little bit. But I'll tell you what's kind of amazing actually about what Amazon has done is if it's under a certain price, they just give you your money back and you don't even mail it back,
Yeah.
right? Or I did one with Sur La Table, and
Hmm.
we had a scratch on something, and they basically said, "Oh yeah, you shouldn't use it anymore because it has the scratch on it, which has is made out of like they don't want flakes to get in your food or whatever it is, right?" And they
Hmm.
were like, "Just prove to us that you threw it in the garbage, meaning or had it disposed of. You just take a picture of it, like broken up or in the garbage or whatever, and then you just immediately get a new one in the mail."
Yeah.
And that's it. It's over with. Done. There's no returns. There's no boxes. There's no tape. There's no, anything. And with Costco, I think they're like famously like, we'll take anything back anytime because they look at it and it's a very small percentage of returns, right? They pick really good products to sell. So their return numbers are very low,
Yeah.
right? So those formulas work beautifully. And do they work with smaller companies that don't have as deep
Well,
pockets? I don't know. I don't know how that works out financially.
I mean, I've definitely encountered it for companies that have plenty deep pockets, like Wells Fargo or other banks out there. And, the reason we brought these up is because the question was, how do you manage this and maintain good customer service as you scale?
Yeah.
Well, that's how. And it feels to me like Newegg. Newegg previously had good customer service. They got acquired in 2016, and since then, maybe even a little bit before then, it seemed like their customer service wasn't the customer support and service hasn't been very important to them. YouTube is famous for this also. I've seen multiple YouTubers just get locked out of their account. They were doing pretty well. Critical, who does audio reviews,
Uh
he
huh.
hit 100,000 viewers and then just got locked out of his account. And it's been months now. He can't get back in. He just started a new account, and he's back up to like 30,000 followers.
Yeah.
So, and he said that this just happens sometimes. YouTube just decides, nope, we're just going to shut you down, or we're going to say you violated the rules. We're not going to say what rules you violated, or 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 anything, provide any kind of support for this. And they're just not really motivated because the individual user experience doesn't seem to be a priority for them, which is an issue. Same thing happened with Twitch, where another it's in the news all over the place, where for months they were just not paying out to their Twitch streamers
Uh huh.
the money they were bringing in through their streams.
Yeah. I hear about these things and I'm like, what are the details on this, right? Like we rarely hear from the people who actually make those decisions unless they're automated. Like, oh, this account gets shut down and then it gets flagged to someone who works there. And then when they get
Mhm.
around to it, they look at it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how I would imagine. I don't know if it works that way or not. I'm just saying like if it or does like an actual individual say, oh, I looked at the account and yes, this is a problem. I need to like pause it or whatever it is. And then I'll deal with this when I have, when I can deal with it because I have like a backlog of other issues to deal with,
Mhm.
right? Like I imagine it being a very challenging problem for sure. But at the end of the day, like all this stuff is user experience. It really is. Like
It is.
the people that are on the internet now, the people who are carrying a phone in their pocket, these are not the same people from 92, right? Like these are experienced, well versed tech people. And I mean the general person, the general population is very
Mhm.
good at determining what is a good user experience and what's a bad one because we've
Yeah.
grown up with technology and the newer generation grew up with technology even more than we did. And so we're used to certain things. When a company does a really, really great job with UX, like Amazon does with returns, you just expect everyone's going to do it. Just like you expect free shipping now all the time, or you expect things to be delivered within 2 days, right? A lot of people set a precedent and everyone has to follow. And when they don't, there always ends up being some sort of backlash to it.
Mhm.
So, I hope that everybody like looks at this Newegg problem that occurred and just says, look, we just need to step up and spend money in an area that doesn't really in front of us maybe feel like we're making a good investment, but in the long term, it's a great investment because you have happy customers. Tell everyone else about it. Look how excited you were to tell me how legendary Costco was, right?
Yeah.
Like it's because it was so good to you that you're giving back to it. And I feel like that's part of UX.
Yeah. And I mean, if for anybody who wants any more insight on this, Paul from Paul's Hardware is a YouTube channel. He did a video on this. He's huge friends with the guys at Gamers Nexus, and Paul used to be an RMA specialist working for Newegg, and
Uh-huh.
he talked through exactly what would happen when he worked for Newegg as an RMA specialist,
Yeah.
and how under the policies at the time it would have been handled and it wouldn't have become a problem. But apparently that process has changed in some way. And one of the issues that I run into, and a lot of people are apparently running into, is that it feels as though this is a deliberate way for Newegg to essentially scam their customers in order
Hmm.
to get more money out of them.
But we don't
So,
know
and
that for
that's
sure,
something
right?
we don't know that, but
Yeah.
that is the feel. If somebody is selling you a defective product and
Yeah.
then refusing to accept it when they knew the product where they had as an organization they had enough information within the organization to know that that product was defective when they sold it.
Yeah.
That and you discovered this not because Newegg admitted to it and told you what happened and like, hey, we took a look at it. This is what turns out was the problem. You did that because you conducted your own investigation. That is bad, and it brings up the question: you can't be sure that this wasn't a deliberate scam.
Yeah, you don't. And actually, you said something that I caught while you were talking. You said, but it feels like it, and
Absolutely.
that's UX, right?
Hmm.
Feelings are part of it. If customers feel like they're being scammed or feel like they're not being treated appropriately, even if it's not true, if they just feel that way, they will run away from you,
Yes.
and that has to be solved. So I can't wait to see how this all unfolds, and where this actually goes. But I thought this was a really good story for you to bring up because it tackles UX in a new direction that people don't always think about, which is basic customer service. Um, let's move on to our second topic, which I find super awesome, which is Twitter is broadening its safety mode feature. It was in kind of like an alpha phase where they were just testing it out, and now they're kind of rolling it out to more English speaking countries, and trying to get this under control. And basically, what they want to do is they want to tackle abuse. And TechCrunch did an article about it and talked about some of the included features. And what they're trying to do is figure out ways to give power back to the user, or give not back to the user, give power to the user to control abuse, other issues that occur with other users on the platform. And reported by TechCrunch also, like automatically blocking accounts for 7 days, which are replying to the original poster with harmful language or sending uninvited, repetitive replies like insults or hateful remarks or mentions. I like that they're going after this and they're trying to make this work. This has been a problem for a long time. People love Twitter, but the one side of UX that people don't like about Twitter is the abuse and the harmful stuff that happens. Do you think, Dee, that these types of tools are going to kind of tackle the bigger abuse problems that are happening on Twitter?
Uh, Honestly, no, not by themselves.
Yeah.
It is, it. I don't know if the Twitter experience can be salvaged. I'll be interested to see what it is, if it can be. But it feels as though when I think of Twitter, the purpose of Twitter is to get angry at this point. Like if I'm going to go on Twitter, it's because I want to get angry at something, or like at the very least, I expect to be made angry by looking at Twitter because it's become so synonymous with the experience at this point.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good first step. It doesn't make sense to me why it took so long to do this when Instagram has been doing this with images, like potentially offensive images, for
Uh huh.
quite some time. If they can do it with images, the semantic processing in order to identify, like, oh, does it include these typical insult words like moron or things like that? If it includes the words like in the combination, you are a moron, then hey, maybe we can do something about that.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, Twitter has felt like they just didn't want to deal with it, and that's why kind of their experience went to such a negative point that Disney like decided not to acquire them when they were looking at it because it was
Yeah.
just too toxic. Now that we have the new CEO, we're starting to see some things roll out. I think this is one step in a process that could potentially salvage the experience for it, but I don't think it's going to do it on its own.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say, like acknowledging the problem is the first step. Right.
This is
So
true.
it's
Yeah.
like, this is basically acknowledging the problem in a bigger way. This is basically saying, like, we're going to put money and energy behind tools to help you figure this stuff out as a user, but also to inform us of who is causing these issues. And hopefully, with, some, AI, maybe some natural language processing and all the different tricks and things like that are available today, they can kind of control the platform a little bit better. I don't think you're ever going to have full control. I don't think you're ever going to like stop people from trying to do, things like calling someone a moron or that kind of stuff. But if stuff quickly gets flagged and it starts to annoy them, maybe they just won't want to be on the platform anymore. And that could be like maybe phase 2 of this, right? Is like disincentivizing people to want to act that particular way.
Well, I think there's a couple things that would probably be helpful for Twitter that they can try out and see. You always have to like try it out and then make adjustments and then go forward. And the number one thing they can do is algorithmically promote, content that elicits positive emotions, right? Like just start if you can notice semantically like a lot of praise words in the comments and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now elevate that, showcase it. So something happened that somebody posted a video or made a comment that people thought was good. Go ahead and elevate that so that it's promoted over the people yelling at each other all the time.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that I think that Reddit and Discord and some other places have done pretty well, they've all had their issues, absolutely for sure. But
Yeah.
one thing they've done pretty well is they've empowered trusted users within their communities in order to kind of be an intelligent line of defense against things like abuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That helps.
I
That
think,
helps a lot.
yeah,
But
if you can
I also think part of it though,
identify,
D, is coming out and saying we will not tolerate it, right? So like Reddit really is focused on telling the world, like, we're not going to
Mhm.
tolerate this stuff, right? And so Twitter has to do the same thing, like, we will not tolerate it. You will be gone, and be really firm about it to show that they support the users, and then and then basically the users will support them, right?
Well, I think that's helpful. I don't know if to me Reddit that the stuff still happens for sure, and they've
Hmm.
learned the hard way that like okay, we need to be a little bit more involved and can't just let this be. If this is just a completely unmoderated like wasteland, then it's gonna be nasty. They have kind of done this and they've done it a bit ahead of Twitter. And one of the nice things about Reddit is really easy to to curate what kind of experience you want. If you go into a subreddit and it's really toxic, then you don't subscribe to that subreddit. You go and join, the cats subreddit, and people are all happy looking at cats or turtles or whatever else, right? You find some happiness and things within those subsets of that experience, and you stick
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Twitter can do something like that, but if they promote content that is getting positive and happy and uplifting replies, then that incentivizes the users on there to stick to that rather
Hmm.
than starting flame wars over, sports or political opinions, just because they know that if they say something that is gonna troll people, basically, then people are gonna get a lot of angry replies, and then that's gonna show up in the Twitter algorithm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it unfolds. I think they're going to release it randomly to around 50% of the users, and then gather more data from that, and then eventually roll it out to 100% of the users. So that's something we can even try out ourselves if it gets presented to us on our Twitter account. So the final topic we have today, which was super interesting, is these new Link Buds by Sony that you had shared with me. I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on all this stuff. But like the thing that really threw me was the way they were designed. Like
Yeah.
I've never seen an earbud look like that before, and I so badly want to try putting them in my ears to see how they work.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen these before, they're new. Sony I think they released them. I've definitely seen some actual hardware reviews of people trying them out. It's a new, definitely very weird design for like a wireless earbud. It's what we would call open back, where it's not enclosed in like a capsule, so the sound can theoretically escape, but outside sounds can get in. So, and the way they accomplish this is the actual earpiece is a circle with a hole in the middle, so it looks like a donut. Um, and again, it gives you kind of an open back sound where you can hear the world around you, and you'll get some sound leakage. But there's such small drivers in this thing that it probably don't get a lot of sound leakage.
Hmm.
Um, Now they're probably using a technology called balanced armatures in order to develop the sound, and these things are tiny, tiny, tiny. A lot of, I believe, most of the wireless earbuds to this point are using dynamic drivers. So there's usually around 5 or 6 nanometer diaphragm attached to a voice coil that has a magnet in it, and you pass current through the coil, and it creates an electromagnetic kind of field that interacts with the permanent magnet and moves the voice coil.
Hmm.
Now, with the balanced armatures are something that is much smaller. They're the technology that is used within hearing aids, and more recently they've been used more within like in ear monitors,
Hmm.
like professional or audiophile, earbuds, basically, in order to produce sound. And they've some up till recently they've been very expensive. You would pay like $400 or $500 for something that has a few different balanced armatures in it in order to handle the spectrum of audible sound in order to provide audio to you. But I think the price has been coming down, and there's been open back earbuds and IEMs before. Like Odyssey has one that's very expensive. I think it's like $600-700. Koss has one KSC 75 that clips on your ears. It's very
Hmm.
kind of traditional. It's very old school. It looks like something from like you'd wear with your Walkman in 1995 or something like that. But that's legendary. People love it, and that's open back. So you would get this open sound to it. You've heard open back because when we were back at NASA, you've heard like the Sennheiser 600s,
Yep.
ESG 600s, and if you're out there, you've never heard an open back sound before, you really owe it to yourself to try it. You get a much more natural sound to it. It doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like audio within a box, right? It sounds like, all right, this sounds much more natural. It sounds much more like music is being played on instruments near me. The downside is without the resonance of a closed space, then the bass just kind of escapes. So it's a little bit more difficult to get really strong bass out of it,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's very natural. And at what it is able to do for you within this design is, instead of having microphones that pick up the world around you and have that hear through technology that you hear on a lot of different earbuds out there,
Uh-huh.
it actually just lets you hear the world around you. So it sounds much more natural. Or even when you're playing music, you can hear things around you. Like, you're walking down the street and a bus is coming at you. You're going to hear it instead of just hoping that it's not there or having to look around as much.
Well, three things actually came to mind when you were talking about this. So, first off, is a lot of these companies that are making earbuds seem like they're heading down the direction of wanting to do hearing aids. I know it's not, you can't call it an aid. There's actually a specific term that
Mm-hmm.
a hearing assistant or something like that. There's like a term for it, but it seems like they want to go down that path and they're integrating a lot of the technology into their earbuds to do so. This one caught my attention because when you insert it into the ear, it actually is completely flat. So there's
Yeah.
actually nothing hanging out of your ear. So if you feel self conscious about leaving something in your ear all day long, that kind of goes away. Um, it seemed very light. Like you talked about, it has the balanced armatures, which you said are used in hearing aids. I wonder if what we're looking at here is technology that is going to be used for the purposes that you outlined, but in the future, through software, we can just enable it for hearing adaptation. Like, being able to adapt to environments, like you said, like you're walking down the
Mhm.
street, you can hear everything that's going on, but maybe you can amplify some of those sounds into your ears because you have some hearing loss.
I mean, that's possible. There's right now, I think in a lot of the Apple earbuds, they have a feature where with the hear through feature, it will actually amplify the sound of spoken words and kind of deaden other stuff. So you can, it's a little bit easier to pick out, uh, somebody talking to you. So that's already kind of being done. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this one if that is a feature they can introduce. I'll also be interested to see if there's a lot of copycats on this form factor because you don't have to do the hole in it. You can make it look like a regular one, but just instead of it having like a solid back, you just have a form of mesh through it so that sound can get through.
Yeah.
That's usually what people do when they're doing open back headphones
Uh
because
huh.
then you can get some level of sound dampening rather than it just being sound being out in the world. So we'll see kind of where that goes.
Yeah, one of the other things that came up was that you and I were doing a study, maybe it was like 5 or 6 years ago, and we were talking to cyclists. I don't know if you remember this. And
Mm-hmm.
the cyclists told us that they never wear earbuds, even though they'd love to listen to music while they cycle, because sometimes they cycle for like 6 hours a day. They'd love to
Mm-hmm.
wear earbuds when on the streets, but they're too worried about getting hit by cars and having
Yeah.
other issues. And I thought to myself, I wonder if this would solve that problem. I wonder if you get a pair of these and you wear them while you're writing, you can listen to music, but also still be able to hear kind of what's going on when it comes to, like, cars and buses and other noises that are essential to safety.
Yeah. Almost every cyclist that I've talked to that has considered wireless earbuds with with the hear through sound have had issues with it because it just picks up wind and pumps wind noise into your ear.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one that came to mind was there's been some rumors going around that this whole metaverse movement and things like that, that the people who invent and create earbuds might be trying to integrate some of the technology of like wayfinding and like adaptive environments and different things that you can do in the environment, which they keep putting under the umbrella of metaverse, which doesn't really connect for me, but whatever, it's fine. Into the earbuds, like that they want people to get to a point where they would wear these earbuds all day long, and not only can they track your health, right, because you can get like heartbeats and all
Mm-hmm.
those different things through your ears, but also as you're riding down the street, turn left, or watch out, there's a this and that going on, like in trying to create a more symbiotic relationship with your environment through your earbuds. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there is a way to integrate this technology or any kind of open back technology, especially to get basically AR experiences integrated into your life. So you could have even if you don't have it like a head mounted display as far as like a pair of glasses or anything that are AR enabled, you can have kind of AR experiences that are just being presented auditorially, right? Like you're walking around and you're you're involved in some kind of a GPS enabled game like a Pokemon or something like that. Pokemon Go. Well, maybe you hear that Pokemon in your ears as you're moving around, and it's just, especially if you have the right spatial processing, maybe you have accelerometers built into it, so it can tell when you're turning your head and things like that. And so I think Apple has already kind of done that with Apple Pro Max. But it can say, okay, well, you've got a Charmander off to your left. Turn your head or with your phone and take a look, and it'll be
Yeah.
there. You can certainly enable experiences like that. I think could be very interesting.
Yeah, maybe the earbuds is like the next big move, right? It just seemed like there's a lot of investment from a lot of these companies, Sony, Apple, Google. Everyone's like putting money into earbuds.
Yeah,
And it
I
seems
mean,
like the use cases are starting to open up more. It used to be just be like, oh, I'm listening to music, or I want to listen to books on tape or whatever. Now
yeah.
it's actually like growing beyond that. And when I heard that, like, oh, you can get a lot of medical information just from inside the inner ear, I was just like, man.
Mhm.
I mean, between the phone and the earbuds, it's like you can pretty much diagnose anything.
I mean, usually when you think of like a display, right, especially like a head-mounted display, you tend to think of like VR or AR goggles, something
Yep.
over your eyes in order to display things visually to you. But when we were working in advanced controls and displays lab at NASA, you specifically were in the audio lab for working on audio displays. So you can definitely think about think about when you go to like Alcatraz and they have those audio tours.
Yes. Yes.
Now, if you can imagine that you, instead of having the over ear stuff, you can just have it on an app and connected to your earbuds that maybe they're open back so you can hear the world around you while you're doing it. It sounds more immersive, like somebody's actually just talking to you as opposed to like there's a recording playing back in your head. And as you walk around, you have, a virtual tour guide who's telling you stuff about, Alcatraz um, or the Exploratorium or any other place that you might go that has like historical information or entertainment value or educational value, like a museum. You're walking around and it can tell that you just walked up to, Starry Night from Van Gogh, and
Hmm.
it starts telling you the history of it
Yeah.
spontaneously. Or it
Yeah.
can ask you, like, would you like to know more about Starry Night? And you just say yes, it recognizes your voice and just starts talking.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, and I find it quite exciting. I find it exciting because not only can we help people, like with hearing loss and medical support and things like that, but we can also play games potentially on them. We can also learn and be educated with them. We can potentially protect our ears. Maybe you go to a concert and you put them in, and then suddenly they can kind of tone down how much actually will go into your ears, so you don't have to wear um, the earplugs, right? I feel like there's all these use cases opening up, and it's going to be really exciting to see what's going forward. But this was really fun today, Dee. I think we talked about some interesting stuff, and I'm excited to see what's going on in the tech news for next week. But thank you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. Really appreciate it. We'll be posting links to many of our sources that we referenced on Twitter. So you can find us and follow us on Twitter at the X Podcast One. That's the X Podcast number one. If you try to abuse us or send anything negative toward us, Dee's going to use his new Twitter tools to stop you. Just kidding. If you liked this post, found it interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you use. We don't get paid to do this. We do it for fun. And as long as people continue to listen, we'll continue to do it. So thanks, everyone, and we will see you all next week.